welcome back to another Just 5 Mins. Yep, it's one of those rambling ones. I think this one might be number 4, Weekend Ramble number 4. I can't remember. Who keeps a score of these things? I don't know. So if you want to turn off right now, please do. You've got better things to do. Haven't you got, things to... Anyway, but firstly, I was just about to start recording about 4 or 5 different Just 5 Mins. And given that it's rather early on a Sunday morning, I don't know, it seems a bit crazy, doesn't it? But there we go. I'm sat in front of a microphone for some reason. And I hope it's clear enough. I did buy myself a slightly upgraded microphone. Actually, it was quite a cheap brand one, but I think it's working okay. And you know what? It doesn't matter. It's you just have to get something working. We spend so much time trying to get the right this, the right that, the right environment. Just do it. And I'm not sponsored by Nike, by the way. So there you go. But anyway, firstly, an apology, because I was going to record, and I will, a few of these Just 5 Minutes, and quite a few of them came from my good friend Tim Abel, who's also got a wee little podcast out there. In fact, come on, Tim, where's the next episode? He does have some real insightful, like real development insights. He usually works with, I think, a lot of much larger projects than I ever will or did. And, they're always really quite inspiring, actually. There's a lot of good insight. And I think he tends to record them late at night. So it's like, I call him Whispering Tim Abel, which you won't probably get the reference if you ever never knew in the UK on, I think it was Radio 2, maybe, BBC Radio 2, Whispering Bob Harris, used to be a DJ that, was quietly spoken and, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, that's a real abstract one. But anyway, apologies, because he's got some really good suggestions that he keeps throwing to me. And by the way, you can send some suggestions if you ever feel inclined to. Goodness me. You can add comments. It's not charged. At one point, I didn't realise Substack that I use sort of made you pay to do some comments. Who's going to pay for that? I mean, you can donate to feed all those unicorns. They're not cheap to run these unicorns, But anyway, I'm joking. So back to the ramble at hand, which is still going on, isn't it? I think, again, I will get back to some proper Just 5 Mins, but it is. It's overload as usual, isn't it? And I think this is, it's not getting any easier, is it? The whole FOMO thing, fear of missing out and trying to, taking too much information at any one point. I think we all are. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's not just software or technology. I think we're all getting, and we have done for a long time. It's just overload, isn't it? And it's weird, isn't it? We're very particular about our favourite foods, your car you drive, and yet we're sometimes not as specific with the thoughts that we think or the information that we take in. Wow, that's a bit deep, isn't it, for a Sunday morning? But it's true. It's true. We all get, zapped with so much stuff. And, I'm the biggest culprit, really, I think, or one of the biggest culprits. I'm trying to probably do too much as usual. But I don't know. There you go. I mean, it's what fires up at any time, doesn't it? It's like I've got just 5 mins to do on this one about, now obviously into technology world, Visual Studio, Microsoft Visual Studio. If you haven't heard of it, well, that's okay. Or VS Code and stuff like that. And I was thinking, it's back to that really crazy thing of flavors of ice cream, isn't it? What works for you? Because I was thinking, I think it was last year, 2024, maybe towards the end of 2024, that JetBrains, that's another company that produce a lot of these IDEs, integrated development environments, things like WebStorm and PyCharm, and I think crikey, what's the Rusty one? The one for Rust. Anyway, there's Rider, JetBrains Rider, and I always wanted to use it, but I couldn't bring myself to, pay the subscription. Obviously, because I'm not in a full-time development role and stuff like that. But the weird thing is, I kept seeing Rider and stuff, and I thought, okay, I've really got used to using Visual Studio, to be honest, for most of my stuff, because a lot of these IDEs are so immense. Really, there's so many features that you're not using, and that you never probably would use. In fact, I've been going through some interesting things. Watching a video from Sean Wildermuth, actually, about some tips and tricks about debugging in Visual Studio, which I had no clue of. And again, I'm not a proper developer, so maybe there's a lot of those things that wouldn't have been there. But I was sort of like, it's like you get stuck in a way. And I've always liked the idea of Rider, and I think, one thing, yeah, sure, the cool kids seem to use Rider, from what I can see. But actually, it is, I'm sure I'm correct in saying this. You'd think I'd open a browser and just check this, wouldn't you? But anyway, the idea is, I'm pretty sure that Rider is true cross-platform. It'll work on Windows, Mac, Linux. I'm going to say Linux to annoy people. And I know Visual Studio tried to get a Mac version, and they did for a while, didn't they? Excuse me. Non-edited, this Ramble podcast, so you've got a free cough there as well. But yeah, so there was a version of Visual Studio on the Mac, and I know, there's a lot of effort in that, isn't there, trying to get it cross-platform. But I think that ended up dying because VS Code became really, and it always was, the cross-platform IDE that you can still do a lot of stuff that you can do in Visual Studio. Anyway, but back to JetBrains Rider. Again, why am I not using it? Because it seems to be very, very good. And I don't know, if you've got any compelling thoughts why I should be using Rider, let me know. Let me know in the comments, as they say. But yeah, this is a ramble, so I can ramble, and you can turn off at any point. So there you go. But anyway, the idea is that there's a lot of good stuff, and I do this occasionally, but probably not enough. Is, my goodness, the gratefulness of how many free, amazing resources they really are. Like I think I have donated once or twice, but a long time ago. I'm using Audacity for the recording of this. It's free, cross-platform, all that sort of stuff. It does loads of stuff that I'll probably never ever use. And again, it's free, So I have, again, occasionally sort of donated to it, but it's a really good application. And then I'm thinking, JetBrains turned around at the end of last year and made Rider free for, like, your indie developer-y, non-production type stuff. Obviously, as always, look at the licensing, do all those sort of things, but it's free to, use for just your hobbyist type thing. Visual Studio, yep, it's got the community edition that it's had for a long, long time. VS Code, all of these other things. I mean, even a lot of this AI stuff. You've got a lot of wiggle room for free stuff, and we really do get very complacent, and I certainly have been feeling that. It's like AI. We're sort of to the point. I was watching a couple of videos about how AI's writing code and all that, obviously, all of those things. And it's almost become this, I don't know, like the fast food of coding, isn't it? You know, people just quickly write, you know, spinning up these relatively complex applications and then just throwing them away, which it's just the way it is, isn't it? It's like anything, you know, the stuff that would have taken you maybe weeks or even months to develop, and you know, these AIs are generating it in, you know, a few minutes, you know, or whatever. So it's sort of incredible, really, isn't it? Anyway, it's just quite amazing what is, you know, available to us, really without any cost in a lot of cases. So yeah, so it's a really crazy world, but it really is, back to that old analogy of flavors of ice cream. It's whatever flavor you like, you know. And I have to say, I think I get stuck in the vanilla flavored ice cream, like, you know, just the default. And that's why I maybe stick with things like Visual Studio and stuff like that, because you just sort of get used to it, you know. But when you do try something new, sometimes, you know, it can work out. But yeah, there's so much stuff, isn't there? There's just so much. You know, I'm working on about 4 different, you know, sort of personal projects, you know, at any one time. And, you know, it is about time slicing, time blocking, which I'm trying to learn. I'm nowhere near that yet, but I'm trying to block off chunks of time, you know, to do this and then only this and all that sort of stuff. So, and I think that's the big thing. It's as best you can is to try to get the focus element, isn't it? And I think that's where people really do shine. You know, that either write a book or write software that they're just focused on that one thing. And I think you do have to cut through all the other noise that's going on. But you know, it's a good lesson in itself to try to, the more, you know, overload of information, you know, the more simple you want your life to be, really. And that's not just in technology, is it? But yeah, but having said all of that, I'm trying to, you know, yeah, you know, constantly learn, and I think that's not a bad thing either. You know, there's so much moving, even in like the you know, the development world, like .NET that I work in mostly. You know, there's so much that changes. I mean, you've got a new release of .NET every year, which, you know, I'm not, I don't know if it's a good bad thing. I think it's quite amazing that they can do that, and I think a lot of other systems sort of work like that as well, where it's constantly improvement. But you do get to a point you think, you know, do you really need all of this? Well, it's almost like once the ball starts, it's like, you know, a boulder rolling down the hill, isn't it? It can't just stop. It has to continue until it reaches whatever end. So I think that's just life, isn't it, really? It's continually expanding, and I think, you know, it doesn't matter. You can't really stop the expansion. You know, it's like you can hide away from it and you can try to deny it and all those sort of things. But it's there, isn't it? The world is a crazy, chaotic place, but there's amazing things about the world as well, which if you take your eyes off the news for maybe a day or two, you know, that's not a bad idea as well, I think. Wow, it's getting very profound, this, isn't it? No, it isn't. It's the unicorns are forcing me to say that. Anyway, but yeah, you know, I'm trying to learn too much at one point, trying to hone my SQL skills and my C# skills, and Python as well. I'm trying to revisit Python. I mean, I used to do a lot of Python code a long time ago, back a long time ago, and Java as well, actually, which is sort of gone by the by for me. But Python, obviously, with all the AI implications and stuff like that. Yeah, it's the FOMO, fear of missing out, but also, Python is actually really good, and there's a lot of AI ecosystem stuff there to work with as well, and it's not hard. I will get back to what I sort of said about a month or two ago now about, I don't know if there's any thing about trying to do some learning coding and stuff like that. I don't even know if I'm the right person to do it. But I think like I mentioned I think I did a LinkedIn post about it. It's like when you're a kid, like I said, you're playing with Lego or Meccano or whatever it is. You don't suddenly get a degree first before you start trying to build something. You play with it, don't you? You get something working, then you get interested, then you'd go deeper into it. So that's the approach I was going to take with some code. It's not to try to teach coding in the traditional sense, but just to say, how you can get started, and it doesn't matter what background you've got. The biggest barrier is your own fear, isn't it? A lot of time, or time, yeah. And there we are. All our time is so much eaten into these days. But there we go. Because it's a lot of this stuff isn't really that difficult. It's like everything. You need a little bit of focus, a little bit of time, and therein lies the problem. It's not usually a financial cost that's stopping you. It's that motivation, isn't it? That little bit of time, and you don't need a huge amount of time. I'm trying to say this for myself, so don't worry. I'm not preaching. I'm like I say, I'm revisiting Python. I'm trying to learn Rust in the background. I'm a rustling or whatever they call it. Again, Tim will probably laugh at me. And to what end? Well, to no end, really. You don't really need it. I'm not necessarily going to be a full-time developer with it, but it is quite interesting, Rust, actually. And it also breaks a little bit out of, the again, what I was saying before about why I'm not using Rider. I just keep using Visual Studio, because I've just got used to it, and I've got used to .NET, even though it catches me out quite a lot. But Rust is, and it's been used actually by a lot of these big enterprises to rewrite stuff. In fact, there was a recent one. I don't know if you know TypeScript. It's a superset of JavaScript. JavaScript's almost like herding cats, really. It's not a bad thing. Don't worry, I'm not having a go at JavaScript. It does a lot of amazing stuff. There's a lot of amazing JavaScript frameworks, but TypeScript gives you type safety, and it's got sort of classes and stuff like that it sort of does. Anyway, but I didn't realize this actually, that TypeScript was actually written in TypeScript. And over the years, it's got a little bit slow and a bit clunky here and there. And I think just literally at the time of this recording, it's a couple of weeks ago, they've announced that they're rewriting TypeScript in Go, the Go language. I think from Google originally. I know it's open source, but I think Google had a lot of backing. And a lot of people go, why didn't you use Rust? Why didn't you use Rust? I don't know, really, is the answer. I think it was for portability, they say, but I would think Rust is quite portable as well. But anyway, but there we go. Just it's a ramble, so I can get away with this. But yeah, there's a lot of amazing stuff. I've refound sort of working with Blazor. There was again, if you don't know Blazor, it's a .NET thing, and I think it was one of, I know there's a big team behind it now, but Steve Sanderson, came up with these crazy sort of things. But it's essentially I don't know, should I call it an evolution of ASP.NET, where you had the web pages, you've got Razor pages. Well, that's where Blazor comes from. It's got WebAssembly and Razor. And the Razor syntax is really just again, a top level view is like, it's just sort of HTML markup, but you, instead of writing JavaScript as a front end, you use C Sharp basically, which if you're a .NET developer using C Sharp, then writing web development stuff makes a lot of sense. You can still use JavaScript through an interop mechanism, and so, you know, but I must admit, I sort of went away. I've done a bit of Vue JavaScript stuff before. Vue's a JavaScript framework. I did Angular a long time ago, and it was sort of my go-to JavaScript framework, actually, Angular, for a long time. I didn't write anything hugely complicated, but funny enough, it did actually get, and I don't know, I haven't revisited, so I'm not having a go at Angular, but it just got a little bit clunky and a bit like, you know, it took sort of ages even just to set the environment up. Vue definitely was a bit better. React, I don't know, I've always had a funny thing about React. Again, flavors of ice cream. You know, I've sort of got into a little bit. I had to try. I could see how it's quite useful, but I don't know. The flavor of ice cream in the JavaScript framework world was Vue for sure. Just seemed to be a little bit more. What's the word? I suppose, I don't know. Just the way that it's set up, the way that it worked, and the structure just seemed to work okay. But still, you're having to, you know, do a lot of JavaScript stuff, and it is TypeScript, I think, in a lot of these things now. They've obviously added TypeScript to a lot of this, so it gives you, you know, objects and all that type of stuff. Anyway, another story for another day. But interestingly, yeah, you know, when you use it, I went back to Blazor because it sort of had a bit of a bumpy ride. I think it's been, it's a few years, good few years now, and it's sort of had issues here and there. And I think, again, you're never going to really realize how good or bad something is until you've really used it, and not just like a little hobby project. I think until you actually use it in anger, as they say, you don't have to be angry about it, do you? But anyway, I know from reading a lot of other stuff that it seemed to have its issues here and there. But now, I must admit, what we're up to, .NET 9 and Blazor, I don't know, I'm using it because it just seems a lot easier to do routing, to do this, to do that. And again, obviously, it implies that you need to know a little bit about C# code. Again, it's not difficult. You know, it really isn't. I think it's like a lot of, it's not just in technology. There's a lot of stuff that, yeah, you know, you can, you know, there's real experts, really real experts. Then there's experts. Then there's whatever. Then there's the everyday, you know, sort of things. It depends what you want to do with this stuff, but it intrinsically isn't that complex to do most of the common stuff. But obviously, like a lot of things with, you know, you take mechanics, you know, fixing an engine or something, you know, you might know it conceptually how to fix the engine, but when you put it into practice, there's quite a lot of nuances there. But at the same time, it shouldn't stop you getting started. But Blazor, back to Blazor, it's come a long way, and I've got a full just 5 mins and a video as well on just 15 mins coming for that, just revisiting Blazor, because it's a whole thing. WebAssembly, that's another thing. Won't go into that too much, but you can run .NET compiled code in the browser, but it's not just .NET. You can run Rust in the browser. You can run C++ in the browser. It's basically running binaries in a sandboxed environment in the browser. So it's all quite nice, but Blazor's also got like a server rendering aspect to it, and I think in .NET 8, certainly .NET 9, it's got an auto switch where it'll use server side when it needs to initially, and then it can switch to using WebAssembly, to make it more responsive once WebAssembly's got up and running, because it does take a slightly. I mean, they've done an amazing job to make that the runtime as small as it is, but it does obviously take a little bit of time to download, install. Well, not install, but download and get fired up, ready for running in the browser. But usually it's a few seconds these days if you're on a reasonable internet connection. Yeah, it's quite magic, really. But Blazor itself is just, again, if you're from that .NET perspective, it just it does it just feels more natural. You can still use a lot of JavaScript stuff. There's no problem using the interop mechanism. But yeah, there's amazing stuff. It's jumping around all sorts of different topics. Docker, Docker Desktop, doing a lot of stuff with that. Again, for a lot of the individual developer hobbyist type stuff, a lot of it's free. It's amazing amount, and that's the key thing, isn't it? There's so much available. Where do you even start? But like I say, you just one step at a time, isn't it? A journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, or whatever that phrase is. But anyway, it really has been a ramble. There's a few things been looking at, and I'll get around to getting the proper Just 5 Minutes sort of episodes out. Again, if you want to throw anything over that might be quite interesting as a suggestion, please do. Thanks again to Tim, because I will be getting to those suggestions that you've sent through. And there you go. I think 27 minutes or nearly half an hour is enough for a ramble on a Sunday morning. So take care. I hope you're having a good week, whatever it is that you get up to. And we will catch you on the next one.